In 1982, viewers had just grown accustomed to the new fresh-faced Fifth Doctor, played by Peter Davison. Whovians were treated to classics such as Kinder and The Visitation. And who could forget Black Orchid? Well, actually, there's quite a few people that might forget about Black Orchid. On 8th of March of that year, the first part of the penultimate story of Doctor Who's 19th season was broadcast for the first time. The title? Earthshock. In retrospect, this story has been praised highly by fans. It has always come high in Doctor Who magazine polls in story rankings, most recently coming 24th out of 241 stories back in 2014. It was praised for being one of the best Peter Davison stories. It was praised for being one of the best stories from the 1980s. You could even say that it has been praised for being one of the best stories of all time, especially from the classic series. So, why is that? Well, here is my review of Earthshock. It's got Cybermen in it. Oh, that all makes sense. Okay, it's the end of the review. See you later. Bye bye. The thing about Earthshock was, it was the home run story of season 19. Eric Sayward took huge risks with this story, and those risks paid off massively, because if you think about it, I am here talking to you about it now, decades later. Just goes to show, really. The 4-part adventure starts off like your standard Peter Davison story. First-time viewers would be forgiven for thinking that this isn't exactly anything groundbreaking, and that's fine. The TARDIS team land in Earth's future. The Doctor bickers with Adric, and you get a little bit of dialogue between Nyssa and Tegan, and you've got this group of archaeologists, and they get murdered, and the TARDIS crew get blamed for it. Pretty standard quality up to this point. We've seen all of this sort of thing before in Doctor Who, nothing new, but part 1 of this story, it's all about suspense. We get an android who's pretty much responsible for all of these murders, thus proving our heroes are innocent early on. But then we get that killer blow from the Fifth Doctor, when he believes that the androids are being controlled by another source. Behold, one of the greatest Doctor Who cliffhangers ever.
Destroy them! Destroy them at once!
The reveal of the Cybermen at the end of part 1 flips the story on its head, because long-time viewers would have known how much of a threat these guys really were in the past, especially in the Troughton era. In context of when this was made, the Cybermen hadn't been seen in Doctor Who since 1975's Revenge of the Cybermen, a whole 7 years prior to this story coming out. That story was not exactly renowned for being one of the Cybermen's greatest hits. I mean, from Tom Baker's first season, I say that's probably the weakest story, to be fair. Earthshock is where the Cybermen are done right. This cliffhanger alone demonstrates their prowess as villains in the Doctor Who universe. What follows is a story jam-packed with action, callbacks to previous Cybermen stories, and one of the most iconic exits for a Doctor Who companion. But before we get to the nitty-gritty, I just want to mention something about the whole aesthetic of the story. Director Peter Grimwade had a unique director's style. He made great use of the sets, creating some of the best imagery from this era of the show. The majority of Earthshock takes place on a space freighter, and this is where the story truly shines. We learn that the Cybermen are trying to destroy the Earth with a bomb, surprise surprise. Luckily it was defused by the Doctor and co. The main characters, along with the humans aboard the freighter, are out of their depth when they realise that the Cybermen are the ones behind the plot to destroy Earth. After their initial plans fail, the Cybermen install a device on the freighter which locks it on a course for Earth at warp speed, and upon impact it would just destroy the planet completely. Admittedly, there's a bit of technobabble here, and all of that does explain why we did get a final part which was quite mad, to be honest, and it sees the freighter travel back in time 65 million years to the time of the extinction of the dinosaurs. While the Doctor, Nyssa, Tegan are fighting with Cybermen back in the TARDIS, Adric stays behind on the freighter to try and unblock the mechanism which the Cybermen planted. However, after a wounded Cyberman attacks the keyboard that Adric is using, the vessel collides with Earth and causes a massive explosion, killing Adric. Adric's death is one of the defining moments of the Fifth Doctor's era, because when you think about it, this is a story in which the Doctor does not succeed. Indeed, the explosion did not destroy Earth in the end, it was just a big explosion. You had the Cybermen get defeated, but then you realise that the Doctor has lost his friend to all of this. Nyssa and Tegan are visibly upset at what has just happened, but what hits me the most is the lack of dialogue from Peter Davison. His face tells you everything you need to know.
Adric? Doctor!
As much as Adric was never my favourite companion, Earthshock was the perfect exit for Matthew Waterhouse's character. The final shot of his destroyed gold star is very hard hitting, not to mention the silent end credits, a first for Doctor Who. Of course, I can laugh at things like Matthew Waterhouse typing on the keyboard, clearly waiting for it to explode. His exit is one of the most powerful ones that the show has ever had, and for that reason alone, Earthshock deserves the full credit. This story is not perfect though. I never took the character of Briggs that seriously, and that's mainly due to the odd casting of Beryl Reid. I get the impression that Reid did not know what was going on, but somehow she still manages to get the job done. Another thing which sucks about this is that I feel Nyssa is pushed to the sidelines again, and Tegan to some extent. At least Tegan does have some stuff to do later on, but Nyssa does nothing. One of the standout performers in this, though, is David Banks as the cyber leader. This guy screams iconic. He does a tremendous job playing the role of cyber leader. He was so good that he came back again for more in later Cybermen stories, but not as this particular leader. This leader got well and truly ended by the Fifth Doctor. Such a great scene. Another scene, which I really love, is when the Fifth Doctor and the Cyber Leader have a conversation about emotions. Peter Davison and David Banks are so goddamn good in this scene. Honestly, I can go on for hours unpicking my favourite scenes from this. Earthshock is a truly remarkable story. It was a game changer so early on in the Fifth Doctor's era. The Cybermen were at their most threatening since the 1960s here, and we just witnessed a companion death for the first time since 1965. Sayward's risk-taking paid off massively, because even after decades of many more stories, this is still
excellent.
Too bad that the story after this one was a pile of shit.